To humiliate me, they cut me off for 6 years and then invited me to my brother's wedding, so I abruptly took everything they needed. I've always believed in creating something for myself, and that's exactly what I did when I started my catering business. What started as a small food truck during my college years eventually grew into a full-service catering company that now employs over 50 people and caters to upscale events throughout the greater Chicago area. It took me almost 10 years of sleepless nights, sacrifices, and unwavering determination to get here. I'm proud of this background because it's necessary to understand what happened at my younger brother Mark's wedding last weekend, which ended up being a complete disaster. To put things in perspective, I haven't spoken to my family in almost 6 years because my mom died when I was 14, and my dad remarried to Jenny, my now stepmother, within a year. Jenny made it clear from the beginning that she didn't want any reminder of my mother, and my father's eagerness to move on allowed her to gradually remove my mother's memory from our lives, which caused a lot of tension between us. My younger brother Mark, who was only 10 at the time, became very close to Jenny. The real breaking point occurred during my college years when I was juggling multiple part-time jobs to pay for school, and my father refused to offer me any financial help, claiming I needed to learn responsibility. At the same time, he was fully funding Mark's education at an expensive private university. I found it difficult to accept Jenny's sudden control and presence in our home. Jenny's condescending attitude toward me never missed an opportunity to minimize my efforts while I was trying to build my future. The last straw came 6 years ago when I discovered that my father and Jenny had sold our childhood home without telling me. I didn't find out until they had moved it to a new place, and by then, everything I had wanted to keep, my mother's remaining possessions, was gone. When I confronted my father about this, he told me that I was being overly sentimental and that I needed to move on with my life. She frequently referred to it as playing with a food truck and praised Mark's actual career in finance after college. After a lot of consideration, I decided to give it a chance despite our family history. I even offered to provide the catering for the wedding at a significant discount as a gesture of goodwill, but Mark politely declined, saying they had already booked another company. I was a little hurt, but I shrugged it off. Fast forward to last month, when I unexpectedly received a formal invitation to Mark's wedding along with a handwritten note from him saying that he missed me and wanted to mend our relationship. Mark seemed genuinely happy to see me, which was a relief, but Jenny's attitude hadn't changed. As soon as she saw me, she made rude remarks about how I looked in my catering business. I ignored it and tried to enjoy the ceremony, which was unquestionably beautiful, but the family seating arrangement was telling. I was seated at a table far from my immediate family with distant cousins I hardly knew, which felt like a subtle reminder that I was still an outsider. Things took a turn for the worse during the reception when my father, who was intoxicated, came to my table and began scolding me. He accused me of showing up without permission, even though I had a formal invitation in my pocket, and loudly said that I was ruining Mark's special day. Before I could even reply, Jenny asked, in a thinly veiled, sarcastic manner, how much I was pretending to be a restaurant owner these days. She even commented on my suit, suggesting that I couldn't afford something as nice as what I was wearing. The audacity of it was unbelievable, so I chose to leave in silence because I knew there was no use interacting with them, especially given my history. I was heading to my car when I noticed that the catering staff was setting up for the main course. I recognized several of them right away because they were my employees. That's when it dawned on me that the catering company my business partner had hired for the wedding had recently been acquired by my company, and the former owner had stayed on as a manager, so I hadn't been directly involved in the planning, but legally I was now in charge of the business and this event. I called my operations manager to double-check. My suspicions were confirmed when I remembered my father's remarks about me ruining the wedding simply by being there. I decided that if my presence was so offensive to them, they would not want my company to cater their event. So I told my staff to pack up and leave right away. Within 15 minutes, 25 of my employees had loaded all the food supplies and equipment back into our trucks and were leaving, and chaos broke out shortly after, leaving 300 guests without their main course or dessert. The contract they signed with the previous owner of the catering company included a clause that allowed us to terminate service if there was any hostile or discriminatory behavior towards our staff or ownership, and that's exactly what had happened. I left my business card with the venue manager and instructed her to have my father contact my lawyer if there were any payment disputes. The fallout was immediate, and by the next morning, my phone was exploding with messages from family members accusing me of selfishness and being petty. Mark texted me to say that I had ruined his wedding and that Jenny was right about me all along. My father, predictably, threatened to sue me for breach of contract, So I blocked their numbers and forwarded all of their communications to my lawyer. A few hours later, I began receiving messages from some of the guests who had attended the wedding. Surprisingly, a number of them were on my side, saying that they were horrified by the way my father and Jenny had treated me. One of Mark's friends, who had previously seen the work of my catering business, apologized for how things had turned out and said he was impressed with how swiftly and professionally my team handled the situation. This support was unexpected, but it reminded me that not everyone in the family was blind to what had happened. I have been thinking about everything that has happened, and honestly, I don't feel guilty because I didn't crash their wedding or cause a scene. I was invited and treated with complete disrespect. They chose to humiliate me, and I exercised my legal right to terminate a service. It was nothing personal, just business. They didn't want me there, so they didn't get my service either. However, I have tried to downplay the entire incident, blaming myself entirely for ruining the reception. I've been drawn into a family drama that I had long hoped to avoid, and now I'm left wondering if I handled it correctly, if it was too much, or if they deserved the consequences for how they treated me. In any case, the situation has been weighing on me, so I'm turning to Reddit for some perspective. I'm grateful for the overwhelming support, and I honestly didn't anticipate this story blowing up the way it has. But I'm grateful for the outpouring of kind words and thoughtful responses. The support has been staggering, and even though I've tried to reply to as many as I can, it's been overwhelming. I sincerely appreciate all of your comments, and many of your viewpoints have given me new perspectives to think about in this whole situation. Many people have inquired about the legal aspect of things and whether or not my father and Jenny are planning to take action against me. The short answer is that they threatened to sue, which is exactly what I suspected. Here's what has happened since my initial post. Immediately following the wedding incident, I contacted my lawyer to avoid any potential legal issues. We reviewed the agreement between the catering company and the previous owner, which was signed by Mark or his wedding planner. It is solid because it includes a clause that permits us to stop services if there is any hostile or discriminatory behavior directed at our employees or owners. This clause was added especially for situations like this, where things could get out of control. To make sure we were ready, I contacted the venue manager, who confirmed that their security cameras had recorded everything. The footage clearly shows my father approaching me, and while the audio wasn't perfect, it picked up enough to verify that he was berating me, and Jenny's unkind remarks were also captured on camera, making it clear that their behavior was hostile enough to justify the decision to stop catering the event. With this evidence in hand, I felt confident that my legal standing was solid. They were more than willing to supply it if needed. At first, I assumed that would be the end of it, but I didn't realize how persistent and bitter Jenny could be. Yesterday, my father's attorney sent a response demanding a complete reimbursement for the catering and threatening to sue for damages, arguing that by canceling the catering, I had destroyed the wedding and caused irreparable harm. They wanted payment for both the catering and the disruption it caused to the entire event, so of course, I wasn't going to give in to their demands. We've sent the offer and are now just waiting for their response despite all this legal wrangling. Jenny has attempted to cause issues before. A few days ago, the venue manager called to inform me that Jenny had been trying to write unfavorable online reviews about my catering business. She said that we had ruined the wedding and exaggerated the situation to make the family look bad. Fortunately, the venue manager was able to stop Jenny's attempts, but it's still frustrating to deal with. My legal team is closely monitoring the situation, and if Jenny keeps spreading false information, we will treat it as defamation and escalate it appropriately. Interestingly enough, the chaos of the wedding has led to new business opportunities, which is the unexpected bright side of everything. As for my brother Mark, he hasn't gotten in touch with me directly yet, but he did send a message through one of our mutual cousins expressing gratitude for how my staff handled the situation and even expressing interest in hiring us for their events. I have conflicting feelings about this. On the one hand, I want to allow them to explain, but on the other, I feel like it's too late for that right now. I'm going to postpone any meetings until the legal situation is completely resolved. On the other hand, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and in some ways, I feel vindicated for standing up for myself. He claimed that he felt bad about not standing up for me during the wedding because he didn't want to upset our father and Jenny. Even though I've been estranged from my father and Jenny for years, this whole situation has been emotionally taxing. Mark's wedding was supposed to be a celebration, but instead it's turned into a legal battle and a source of family drama that I never wanted. The weight of it all is beginning to weigh on me, and I'm left wondering what the long-term consequences will be for my relationships with the rest of my family. Family had treated me like an outsider for years, and I finally drew a line in the sand legally and professionally. For now, I'm focused on seeing how my father and Jenny respond to our offer. If they accept the NDA and the release of claims, maybe we can all move on from this mess. If they reject and decide to pursue legal action, I'm ready to defend myself and my company. In any case, I'll make sure to update you all again. Thank you so much for your support and encouragement. I don't have the answers to those questions yet. Will things ever return to normal? Will I ever be able to mend my relationship with Mark? Or is the damage too great? I recently learned that one of my business associates who worked with the wedding planner that Mark and Jenny hired provided me with some additional insights into what transpired before the wedding. The chaos didn't just start with my arrival. It had been brewing for weeks. According to my associate, Jenny had been extremely difficult to work with from the beginning. This is especially true during this hectic and stressful time. Update 2, as things have only gotten messier since my last update. However, at least the legal side is now behind me. Jenny insisted on making several last-minute changes to the flower arrangements, even though she had already approved them. In addition, she and the event planner argued over nearly every detail. The wedding cake design was changed at least 3 times because Jenny couldn't decide, and she even insisted on a thorough overview of the seating arrangement just days before the event. This is not only inconvenient, but it's also expensive, and there was a lot of conflict between Jenny and the venue staff. Ironically, given that the venue was renowned for its excellent service and the staff were among the best in the industry, Jenny made several critical comments about their professionalism, complaining that they weren't up to the standard she expected for such an expensive wedding. Jenny also attempted to persuade the band to play a different set list at the last minute, even though Mark and his fiancée had personally selected all the songs months beforehand. This was one of those classic situations where Jenny had her hands in everything, making the planning process extremely stressful for everyone involved. There were times before the wedding when it seemed like the event planner was about to resign due to Jenny's constant interference and unrealistic demands, but being the professional that she is, the planner persevered despite the emotional toll Jenny's behavior was taking on the entire team. When my associate told me this, I couldn't help but feel a little vindicated because the confusion and distress I had experienced at the wedding reception were only the beginning of what the vendors had to deal with in the weeks before the wedding. Now let's go back to after what I assume was a lengthy discussion between my father, Jenny, and their legal team. Yesterday, my father's lawyer finally got in touch with us and agreed to accept our settlement offer. They decided to accept the partial refund and sign the non-disclosure agreement, NDA, this morning. They signed all the required paperwork, and we processed the refund, which is 50% of their deposit less the costs already incurred for the food staff and travel. The lawyer's letter was formal, and they didn't bother to include any kind of apology or acknowledgement. While the legal matter may be over, the personal fallout is still going strong and only getting worse. One of the more unsettling developments is that Jenny has been actively trying to undermine my business since the wedding. She has been calling several of my employees to try to get information about how my company operates. Fortunately, my staff is loyal and knows better than to interact with her, especially considering that Jenny has been contacting some of my business partners on LinkedIn with false accusations about my character and accusing me of purposefully ruining her son's wedding. It's one thing to be angry, but it's another to try to damage someone's livelihood. Jenny went too far with these attempts to harm my reputation, and as soon as we found out what she was doing, our lawyer sent her a cease and desist letter that we're taking action against. Given Jenny's history of overstepping boundaries, I hope the cease will be enough to get her to back off, but given her actions, which are now verging on defamation, my legal team is prepared to escalate if necessary. However, the most unexpected development came from my brother Mark. I hadn't expected much from him following the wedding, but based on what I've learned from mutual acquaintances and a few cousins, it appears that the fallout from the incident has affected his marriage as well. After the wedding, she told Mark unequivocally that he should have stood up for me and that letting his father and stepmother mistreat me was unacceptable. From what I've heard, she feels strongly that Mark needs to grow up and stand up to our father and Jenny. This led to a significant argument between them to the point where they postponed their honeymoon to work through some of those issues. It appears that she was deeply upset by the way our father and Jenny treated me, and she confronted Mark about it. This was their first major argument. I don't know much more than that, but it's obvious that my brother is being forced to face the truth about the situation, which includes reevaluating his relationship with our father and Jenny. I can't help but feel a strange mixture of emotions about this. On the one hand, I'm relieved that someone else saw what happened for what it was, and it's comforting to hear that Mark's wife was as disturbed as I was by our father's and Jenny's behavior. But on the other hand, I feel bad for Mark because he's in a difficult situation, and even though I'm upset with him for not defending me, I know he's been under a lot of pressure from our family for years. That's not an excuse, but it's still a difficult situation to be in. I'm focusing on moving forward with the legal matters behind me, and Jenny's attempts to interfere with my business being handled by my legal team. I'm beginning to feel a sense of closure. I'm not sure what the future holds for my relationship with Mark or the rest of the family, but for now, I'm just grateful for the support I've received from my staff, my business partners, and even some strangers. Update 3. Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I want to start by thanking everyone for all the support, comments, and messages I've received since I first shared my story. The past week has been truly transformative, and I want to share how things have evolved and the unexpected turns my life has taken since my last update. Yesterday, I met with Mark for coffee, and it was kind of emotional. I'll keep you updated if anything else happens. For now, I'm hopeful that this chapter is coming to an end. I think we both knew it broke down, and he apologized for years of allowing Jenny's behavior due to our father's favoritism. He was visibly shaken, and I could see how much he was carrying on his shoulders. I always knew Mark loved me, but hearing him admit that he had been complicit in allowing Jenny to dictate our family dynamics through financial manipulation for years was a huge step. He revealed that Jenny had been controlling their family dynamics through financial manipulation for years. I was proud of him for taking this step because it demonstrated that he was prepared to make changes in his life. During our coffee date, Mark also told me about a situation in which his father had transferred most of their assets into her name, including a portion of his condo. Mark was unaware of this and felt caught off guard, which explained a lot about the tension between them. He was frustrated that he had been living under this illusion, thinking he had some control over his life, when in reality, Jenny was orchestrating everything. Mark had a breakthrough with his wife. She reached out to me privately later that day to share some good news. They are attending couples counseling. It appears that Mark is finally speaking up and confronting Jenny in a way that he has never done before. They are actively searching for a new condo that will be in their names only and unrelated to Jenny. This was a huge relief to hear, as it sounds like they are regaining control of their lives and setting boundaries, which is a journey I hope continues for both of them. Additionally, Mark's wife mentioned that they are organizing a small vow renewal ceremony in a few months. The ceremony will have different in-laws seated at the family table, indicating that they are actively working to redefine what family means to them. This made me happy because it seems like they are dedicated to creating a new family story that excludes the negativity that my father and Jenny have brought into our lives. As for Jenny and my father, they have surprisingly stopped talking since signing the NDA. I've learned from some mutual acquaintances that they are facing social repercussions in their country club circle, and it seems that they have been telling their version of events, which people are now starting to question. The whole experience has taught me a lot about the importance of setting boundaries with toxic family members. Sometimes the hardest decisions, like maintaining those boundaries or standing up for your principles, are the right ones, even when they cause short-term chaos. I've come to realize that standing firm in my truth is important. Friends have painted me as the villain, but now it seems like people are beginning to question their narrative, and the consequences of their actions are catching up to them. It's strange to think that their social standing, which they value so much, is now in jeopardy because of their behavior. I'm thankful for the community support, as many of you have reached out to share your own experiences with difficult family dynamics, and it's reassuring to know I'm not alone in this. I hope my story can help others in similar situations, even though the backlash has resulted in unexpected growth and healing in other relationships. I've realized that life is too short for unhealthy relationships, but it's never too late for genuine reconciliation with those who sincerely apologize. Going forward, I intend to maintain my boundaries with Jenny and my father because they've shown me who they are, and I don't want to re-enter that dynamic, but I'm cautiously optimistic about reestablishing relationships with Mark and other family members who are willing to communicate respectfully. I believe there's a chance for us to get back in touch, especially since Mark is now aware of the importance of having healthier boundaries. As for my business, things are going better than I could have imagined. Following the wedding incident, I received several inquiries from potential clients who were impressed with how we handled the chaos. Our reputation has strengthened in the local community, and we're seeing a spike in bookings as a result. The feedback from my employees was heartwarming, with many expressing their gratitude for the strong company culture we've built together. As a result, it feels rewarding to know that my years of hard work are paying off and that I'm being recognized for the dedication I've put into my company. I also took the time to meet with my employees to discuss the incident because I wanted to make sure they felt supported and acknowledged for their professionalism during a challenging event. This made me feel proud as a leader and confirmed my belief in the significance of treating employees well and creating a positive work environment. This is a fine line to walk, but I'm hopeful because life is too short for unhealthy relationships, and I want to focus on the positive connections that bring joy and support into my life. Thank you all for your unwavering support, awards, and kind messages. They've meant more to me than you can imagine. For those who inquired about future family events, I'll continue to maintain my boundaries with Jenny and my father, but I'm excited to explore the possibility of reestablishing connections with Mark and other family members ready to interact respectfully. To share with you how things have improved, I wish you all take care of yourselves and never forget that it's acceptable to defend yourself, even when it's difficult. Understand how it could motivate others to do the same.